Okay, it's time for a long,
really hard
overdue video here on the Zam Madden YouTube channel. What traits should you be looking at by position group? This one's gonna be a pretty information-packed video.
He's not kidding.
Let's get into it. What's up, guys? Zam Madden YouTube channel. Let's get right into it. There's a lot to cover here today. Traits by position, starting off with quarterbacks. With quarterbacks, there is really one trait that I pay attention to, and then their throw style. That is it. So when we talk about quarterback releases, I want to pay attention to kind of a list of some of the better release animations in the game. And I think that MuttGG has a really good list here. Slinger 1 is kind of your Elway release. Slinger 2 is Mahomes. Slinger 4, I do believe, is your Lamar, Steve Young. And then generic 3 after that is going to be your Russell Wilson type. I'm going to sit there and tell you right now, those top 4 are the best releases you can run. If you get into some of the other releases in this game, you guys are going to be in kind of a rough spot. I think that the top 4 are absolutely fine. They're absolutely usable. Unlike last year where you really only had a couple usable ones, this year, not as big a deal. A lot of players make way too big a deal about throwing animations in this game. Gunslinger makes them all faster. Gunslinger makes them all usable. The only real thing that I would pay attention to otherwise is if you don't like the throwing slot that the ball comes out of. Some are a little bit more sidearm like Mahomes or sidearm like Bledsoe's release animation. But those top 4, absolutely usable. Now, the only real trait that I pay attention to with a quarterback, well, there is actually 2. But the big one is census pressure. Now, there are a few different types of census pressure. We have the best, which is ideal. Ideal means that basically they're not really going to take pressure penalties as frequently as players that have, say, average or paranoid or trigger happy. Obviously, the last 2 that I just named, paranoid and trigger happy, those are terrible. Try to stay away from those. I do want to make sure that I let you guys know, if you guys rock fearless on your quarterback, none of this matters at all.
That's what she said.
But for those of you that are playing without Fearless, which shout out to the video that we did a few weeks ago on Fearless. We tested the patch in January, and I laid out the scenarios in which Fearless will help you as opposed to getting away without Fearless. It's a really good video. Go check that out. Basically, your throw under pressure rating is going to be tied to your census pressure rate trait. And if you have 99 throw under pressure with ideal, you'll be pretty good. Now, of course, the flip side of the coin is if they do run under pressures on defense, none of this matters at all. So really what I'm explaining is a scenario where you're playing without Fearless and you're facing a defense that doesn't have an under pressure trait, which those seem to be coming back a little bit. So let's go ahead and keep it moving. Quarterbacks, kind of pay attention. You want ideal, oblivious, or at worst average on your quarterback for that position. Next, we're talking about running backs. Running backs, you know, this is one of those position groups where in the past we used to really stress the braces. Braces versus big hitters, braces versus all, braces never. Are they good? Are they bad? A lot of players don't even know. You know, to be honest, it's a little bit fuzzy for me too. But what we know this year is that really fumbles don't occur that darn much. Peanut punches are probably the source of most fumbles. Otherwise, it's hitting abilities like the avalanche or the prez. You know, X factors on those AKA items. You don't really see a ton of hit stick fumbles. Most players don't really use crusher, enforcer, deflator type abilities to make you fumble the football anyways. What I will tell you is you probably want braces versus all or braces versus big hitters at the very worst. Although there are some items in the game that have braces versus medium that were absolute monsters, such as Christian Okoye or Eric Dickerson, that were pretty solid items. Although I know Austin Eckler was a braces versus medium, and players did kind of complain about him fumbling the ball a little bit when his most recent item came out. So if you guys are really stressing this, probably stick towards brace versus big or braces always, and you'll get your best production. Otherwise, I kind of just use whoever feels good at that moment. Really, the best running back is the newest running back. You guys know how Mutt goes. Wide receivers. Okay, this is the big one. This is the big offensive one because there are some big time misconceptions about wide receiver traits and which ones matter and which ones don't. I want to be clear with this. This is very important, so listen up, turn your volume up. I'm going to yell at you. They do not matter. They do not matter, okay? Listen, traits are basically built to show you how a player will play if you do not user them. So in certain cases, we talked about cards in the past like Jerry Rice that have the sideline catch trait set to yes, but in Madden last year, he jumped out of bounds all the time. And then you have other items in the game that didn't have sideline catch trait, but if you conservative caught, they would actually toe tap consistently. This is exactly what I'm trying to get at. Basically, if you do not click onto a wide receiver, their traits will dictate what type of catch animation they get. So when we look at Harold Carmichael, obviously being a giant human, he is going to have the aggressive catch trait. If you throw a high ball 35 yards down the sideline to him, the AI, if you don't click on, will logically play an aggressive catch animation. If that were set to no and you didn't click on, he would try to do something else and it would go poorly for you. You'd likely throw an interception. You take a look at his rack catch, his sideline catch, his possession catch traits. Basically what this says is if you throw a rack over the middle on a wide open drag, he'll rack it. Or if you just throw the ball, he'll do it on his own, basically. If you throw a ball on the sideline where you would expect a toe tap animation, the AI will attempt a toe tap animation for you. If you were to throw a ball in traffic between zones over the middle of the field on 4th down, he'll do the logical thing and try to catch the ball and get down with the possession catch. If they have these traits set to no, that does not mean that it is impossible for them to get that, okay? If you have a player with sideline catches set to no, that doesn't mean you can't throw a corner route, click on and press A and do the sideline animation yourself. I do not believe, at least in Madden 23, for 1 minute, that you are more likely to jump out of bounds with a player who has sideline catches no than a player that has sideline catches yes. All you need to do is click on and press the possession catch button and they'll tap their feet or at least attempt to. Players with this trait still sometimes don't get 2 feet in. Players without this trait can still get 2 feet in when you actually do the animation on your own. I do not worry about this one bit. I just don't worry about it. Not that big a deal. In terms of the other things for these players, you know, clutch, that can help you with some fluky catch and traffic late in games. So if they have yes, maybe that's great, especially in the red zone in a tight ball game. Not as good as red zone threat, so don't overthink that. You know, drops open passes. Comp Madden doesn't really have wide open drops. It does have bugs where players don't animate, you know, where the ball just goes through your player. That's not a drop. That's just an unfortunate reality of coding and bugs and catch matching animations and has nothing to do with your player or your quarterback. So don't necessarily sweat that. You know, fights for extra yards. You know, if you got a good after the catch receiver, probably do want the fights for extra yards trait. Just, you know, can help you kind of similar to a running back falling forward. But again, not that big a deal either. So there you guys have it on your wide receivers. Now let's get into the meat and the potatoes of this video. This is probably the most important part of the video for defense. So listen up. When you guys target pass rushers, you're going to be looking at their traits. And I chose Nick Bosa off rip because he has everything. He has everything. And that's the narrative out there, is every player that you guys want on your roster needs to have every pass rush trait. And that's true if their power move and their finesse move are both very, very high. You do not want players that have the bull rush trait and have a trash power move. Now 93, that's workable. That's a solid move. But I want to show you an example of something. This list of players right here are players that have pass rush, bull rush set to no, but sorted by their power move high to low. So take a look at this here. We have this player, Ray Lewis. When he dropped, everyone was like, oh man, you know, he can actually have 95 power move as a pass rusher. So I could blitz him as a 3-3 linebacker or maybe a nickel over linebacker up the A gap and he'll have 95 power move. That's great, except for he doesn't have the bull rush trait. So what that means is that if you let him rush on his own, he's very, very unlikely to attempt that animation. And you're basically gonna have to wait for the pocket degradation timer to kick in for him to shed it all. So that's really not a great thing. Now here is a list of players that have every single pass rush trait that you would possibly want, which is an amazing thing, right? Swim, spin, bull rush, all set to yes. But I want to take a look at this card right here. This Christian Wilkins. It does you absolutely no good to use swim and spin moves when you got a finesse move of 79. What he really is ideally a power move guy at 93. So really what you want is the bull rush trait, and you don't want to waste your time with swim and spin moves because every lineman in the game at this point is going to be able to block his miserable finesse move rating. So if he's trying to swim, if he's trying to spin, those are going to be stifled. And really what this means is that the AI sometimes is going to attempt to do those moves instead of what he's best at, which is a bull rush. What you really want in that situation is somebody more like a Vita Vea. Now I understand he's really expensive, but he has power move set to 97. He's really good at one thing compared to the other. So really max out that one thing because he's a player that doesn't have spin or swim and he's got bull rush and he's really, really good at it. So he's going to attempt to do that move and that's the move that he's got. That's what he's bringing to the party. That's his date to the dance. Why would you want to waste your time when you're 7 or 8 or 9 better in the power move than you are the finesse move? Do the thing you're best at. So in this situation, a guy like Vita Vea is better. Or in this case, a guy like Jonathan Allen. This is a similar item to kind of the way that Christian Wilkins was, in that Allen is a pretty good, mid 90s to upper 90s power move and a pretty miserable in comparison finesse move. In this item, you're going to get much better production out of him because he's not going to waste his time doing spin and swim moves like Christian Wilkins. So there is a very, very high chance that if you rock these items, you're going to get much better production out of Jonathan Allen than Christian Wilkins. Now, everybody runs a slightly different defense. And of course, if you like contained players, contains are all about, shedding based off the quarterback moving too drastically. So those don't really count. But when you're talking about an interior rusher, you want a guy that is a really, really good finesse rusher and has swim and spin, but no bull rush, or vice versa, has really, really high power move and doesn't attempt to use the swim or spin because his finesse move is lower. So pay attention to those ratings. They're very, very important. Now, outside of that, high motor is very, very important as well. There are certain items in the game when you have high motor set to no that will try a pass rush or two, and then they quit on the play. If they don't get off the block, they're done. They don't shed. They just sit there. You want that high motor because they're going to constantly keep trying their pass rush moves. And as the pocket degradation timer goes, the players with the high motor are going to be the ones that are likely to get off their block faster than the ones that don't have high motor. So you definitely want to make sure that you pay attention to the traits for the types of moves they use versus their ratings. And high motor is always key. You want to make sure they're always trying to get to the quarterback, not quitting on a play whatsoever. Now, let's go ahead and get into our linebackers. I know a lot of you don't play linebackers, but I'm going to teach those of you that maybe play in CFMs or play regs, or maybe want to use a linebacker in Ultimate Team, how to get the optimal animations out of your linebackers. I will tell you right now that if you play a safety at linebacker, you're going to get better animations than anything I'm about to tell you with a linebacker. But if you guys pay attention to the linebacker style, if you want your linebackers to animate best in coverage, you need a cover LB style. You don't want any of the other styles. You want the cover linebacker style. In fact, when it comes to safeties that you're subbing at linebacker, you probably want them to also have the cover linebacker style. But that's not all. You also want to make sure that you pay attention to plays ball in air. This is typically something that you use with defensive backs, and we'll cover that a little bit more extensively here in a moment. But you want this set to aggressive. So here I'm going to go ahead and set a filter of all linebackers in the game that have plays ball in the air aggressive and a cover LB style. You'll note that some safeties will appear in this as well because they do give them linebacker styles due to the ability for us to sub them in at linebacker. But I'm going to further condense this down to just linebackers. And you're going to see that there's going to be some interesting items that appear. Guys that people actually go pretty goo goo gaga over as far as user linebackers. I can't tell you how many players over the last week I've heard tell me that Kaiser White is an incredible cover linebacker and that he feels just like a user. You'll note that he is cover linebacker, plays ball in air aggressive, and he's rather fast at 94 speed. It actually does have finesse move. Let's see if he actually has a pass rush trait. Nope, he doesn't. So that's definitely fool's gold. Do not use him as a pass rusher, but still a pretty solid user. Rod Martin, a lot of players really like Rod Martin. But I'll tell you right here, Fred Warner. This is an item right here that I did use this year, and he has been my favorite linebacker that I've used at any point in the year. He's actually been better than some safeties. I know I just said safeties and linebacker are better for animating, but there are certain safeties that I've actually kind of been disappointed in in terms of user linebackers. Fred Warner is really good, and he does have, all the traits. He's got the lurker if you want to really get some crazy animations with him. And then those linebackers typically have better block shedding or tackling abilities as well. So if you're looking kind of for a linebacker that is actually a linebacker, but you still want them to animate in coverage, these are the things that you should pay attention to. Now let's get into our coverage players. I want to talk about plays ball in air because we were just talking about that with linebackers. Plays ball in air is going to be tied to a rating. I know that this is probably news for a lot of you, but you want to take a look at the rating of the player, but you also want plays ball in air set to aggressive. If you have a player that has set to aggressive, this means that as soon as that quarterback starts to throw their animation, that player is looking to play where the football is going, as opposed to playing the receiver or kind of waiting a little bit longer with the balance or the conservative trait. You want that aggressive. You want them going and trying to change the game with an interception. Now, the success of that is going to rely, or how fast they break on that with their aggressive trait is going to be tied to their play rec. So when you guys are tying an aggressive plays ball trait to a rating, you want really, really high play rec. I can't tell you how many players I've actually heard say that they were disappointed with Sauce Gardner's honors card. And you take a look at he's actually kind of got lower in play rec for this point of the year. 90, you know, if you use the strategy item, you can get it up to 92. He is an aggressive plays ball in the air type, but you know, in general, if you guys are playing zone or match with this, you're going to note that he's a little bit sluggish to break on the ball. Now, let's compare that to an item that I got a lot of flack for in a YouTube video last week, where I said that the Honey Badger is one of my favorite items in the game. If you take a look at him, you can play him at linebacker with the cover linebacker style. He has plays ball aggressive, which allows you to play him at corner, or in my case, slot corner. But if you take a look at this play rec, it's set to 92. And if you use a strategy item, you can get it up to 94, which is that Cromwell that we just showed you just a moment ago. You also factor in locomotion styles, things like that. He just moves differently. This is why an item like Honey Badger plays well above and beyond the ratings. And you look at it, you say, that card doesn't look good. The card is phenomenal. The card is phenomenal. And it's because he's a aggressive plays ball, high play rec player. Now, I play mostly zone and match, so zone is really, really high. I use a man strategy item to make his man coverage very respectable. I take it up to 95. This is basically an item that is, for me, 98 zone, 95 man, 94 play rec with aggressive plays ball. That's why the Honey Badger, to me, is one of the better items in the game. Now, you guys can probably do even better if you were to consider this Cromwell item. You know, with my item, he's going to be a 99 zone, 99 man, 96 play rec with aggressive and cover linebacker. He'll be on my team in very, very short order, but this is the things that I look at when it comes to a coverage player. If you guys are looking at a balanced or a conservative plays ball in the air, it's not the end of the world. I would definitely avoid conservative, but there are some pretty good items in the game that are balanced items. So you take a look, this is a sorting of balanced plays ball. There's some really, really good cards here. Rodney Harrison has been phenomenal for me. Charles Tillman, you know, his items are always pretty well thought of. I'm not a big fan of his AP on his current card, but his first item in Ultimate Team this year intercepted everything. It's not the end of the world if you have balanced. You can also go into your coach settings and set aggressive for plays ball, and this will kind of override some of those players. So, you know, this is something that you might be able to kind of change in your favor. Now, again, I will tell you that if you set plays ball aggressive and you have a low play rec player for where the game is, you might see them try to break on the ball but take a bad angle, because again, that play rec kind of dictates, you know, how soon or what angle they're breaking on the throw. And if you kind of get that out of whack, you might actually have a player that's lower play rec that's probably better off being conservative, because if they try to break on the ball as fast as possible, they might not do it in a manner that allows them to actually cut the ball off. Now, that's pretty deep, but again, I would just say I leave mine at default. I target high play rec and aggressive, so I don't have to worry about it to begin with. Just get those things as high as possible and tie them together. So that is a quick breakdown of the traits that you need to pay attention to when it comes to your players in Madden Ultimate Team. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure you guys give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, drop those below. We'll see you guys right back here tomorrow with our next video upload. Until then, this is Dan. Get in the lab and good luck.